One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice.
Welcome to the One Mic, One Voice show, building the collective conscious, a show that is created to give space where your voice, ideas, and informed opinions can be heard, appreciated, and debated. You are with Michael Eric Owens on this Sunday morning, one day before Memorial Day, and we're under different circumstances, and I hope you're not going to go out there and gather in large groups, folks, because the death count is almost at 100,000 people. If you want to get more deep into the COVID-19 crisis and what's happening not only statewide, but also around the country, listen to last week's episode because I went deep into the numbers. I'm doing a show right now that that I really did want to do. I fascinated by the LastDance, the documentary, really the Jordan documentary about the Chicago Bulls and their 6 championships from 91 to 98. You know, Michael took a break in between there and came back and dominated again. And why would on one mic I address a sports figure that is not directly linked to some type of current social issue? But I wanted to talk about leadership. And today's episode is titled, What is Leadership? And there has been a lot of controversy surrounding the airness, as we have known him to be called, his leadership ability. And the pundits have been taking shots here and there. And so I'm kind of compelled to come out. You know, I've written a book called Soul, School of Unselfish Leadership. If you don't have it, you need to get it. You can get it on Amazon. You can go to michaelericowens.com and order it there. But I break down, I think, what is the ultimate goal of leadership in that book. But keep in mind, starting off, leadership, I'm speaking of the 21st century leadership. And we have to ask ourselves some very, I think, important questions. Should we classify leadership as good or bad? If you haven't had a chance to watch the documentary, even if you're not a sports fan, I can tell you it's must-see TV. I wish the documentary was still going on. I wish they had 1,000 episodes. And this documentary is based upon an inside view into the Chicago Bulls, which, of course, like so many, I was a fan. I'm a Jordan fan. I'm going to say that right off the bat. I always have been, even when he was at North Carolina. I thought this kid right here could be a great ball player, and I did not understand that he would be the greatest of all time. And that's a whole nother show to debate who is, as they say, the GOAT. But I believe this documentary should have put some things to rest. But even if you are not a Chicago Bulls fan or a Michael Jordan fan, man, it is must-see TV. I'm telling you, it's if you really want to know what it takes to be a champion, to set goals. I'm not just talking about a champion on the basketball court, but someone that had pure determination, someone had laser focus upon where they were trying to go and how to get there. It's a great watch. Now, some will argue the methodology. And so my first question was Michael's methodology. I would say some argue. My first question was, should we classify leadership as good or bad? Is leadership best evaluated by success or its failure? You see, these are two extremely important questions. But Michael Jordan is probably the most well-known sports athlete of our time. Not just my time, of our time. If you look at Nike, if you look at what I think signifies winning, it's the logo. It's the Air Jordan logo. You can see it on elementary school basketball team jerseys. The logo is there. He's cornered the market, not because of who he is, but because of his accomplishments on the basketball court. As I mentioned before, he won 6 championships, 91, 92, and 93. He took a break from basketball and played baseball. That's in the documentary. I don't have time to go into the reasons why or the skeptics and what they proclaim might have taken place. But anyway, Michael came back and he played for about half a season. They end up losing to the Orlando Magic, and he came back in full force the final year, that following year, and they won 3 straight, 96, 97, 98, the only team really in history to three-peat in two separate times. And a lot of people would say something that we will not see again. So here is a very accomplished person. Now, the controversy comes in is when we talk about leadership. Michael was a leader of that team. He saw that team develop over time. He saw pieces come and go. The only really constants were Scottie Pippen, his right-hand man. But all the other pieces, they change. And think about that for a minute. When you're building a team and the team changes over time, you see new people come in and you want them to have a certain level of standard and commitment. And I think this is what was part of Michael's strategy is once he won, he knew what needed to be done. And he just happened to have this sort of, as Skip Bayless would say, this psycho drive to win at all costs. And those are not my words. Those are Jordan's words, to win at all costs. But Sports Illustrated put out this video, and I want us to take a listen. If you're on YouTube, hopefully you can see this video, but it talks about Jordan's leadership. Let's take a listen, and we'll come back and we'll analyze it.
Was Michael Jordan competitive? One wouldn't know from watching The Last Dance. Just kidding, kind of a theme. As is the idea that MJ could be kind of mean to his own team. From antagonizing Scott Burrell for being too nice, to punching Steve Kerr in the face, to not letting Horace Grant eat. But eventually his Bulls teammates did feast, to the tune of 2 separate three-peats. So while Jordan's leadership style may not be for everybody, it certainly worked for them, at least when it comes to results. However, it was kind of unfair for MJ to think everyone could be as driven as him. That's rarefied air, which is why the idea of be like Mike was always kind of a farce. Because in order to be Michael Jordan, you'd have to be harsh.
That's an interesting statement. Again, SportsIllustrated.com. To be like Mike, you would have to be harsh. And I think, number one, when we take a bird's eye view and begin to analyze things, it is what it is. It's a bird's eye view. It's not an inside view. And some things we know from the documentary that was put out there, that Jordan was relentlessly harsh. And that some people would describe it as he ridiculed certain players, that he pushed them and that he dragged them along to get to the mountaintop, so to speak. remember my first question was, should we classify leadership as good or bad? Now, it's important, I think, and I'll speak more to this later on in the show. It's important to realize that we are analyzing leadership, his leadership, in a different era. That's very important, and I think a lot of people miss that. No leader is without criticism. And here I want to say that I'm not here to justify or condone Jordan's leadership style. I wasn't there. I didn't experience it. I'm hearing these things. Mike even said that people might look at him different. They might think that he was a tyrant. If you've read my book, you know my approach to leadership, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I think it's important to understand that the only way for us to judge this is it's a bird's eye view. It's not an inside view. And so it's difficult. It's difficult to say whether it's good or bad. Content is everything here. Context is everything here. We were not there. We were not present. And so to say his leadership style was good or bad, I think that's very difficult. Even in the modern era, I think that I talk about poor leadership in my book, but I'm describing in my book a certain individual that has a certain strategy and focus for leading people somewhere or to accomplish something, and why this person is participating. This new leadership that I'm talking about, they're more of a guide. Jordan was a participant. He was as we would say back in the day, a player coach, right? He was not only a player, but he was also very much in a coaching role, in my opinion. So, yes, Mike described his leadership as harsh. There's stories where him and Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors now, and Steve was a great 3-point shooter and hit a lot of big shots. But there was a time where him and Michael in practice, Michael was antagonizing him, and to the point where Steve lost his cool and punched Michael in the chest. And of course, Michael, being who Michael is, he's always going to win. He popped him in the eye. Now, but he said he felt bad after that, and he called Steve, and Steve said that could have probably been the best thing that happened to their relationship, because they became stronger, and he knew then that Michael trusted him. So good or bad, right? And then we get to the point where we say, how do you evaluate this leadership? Is it by the success or the failure? And, success is a difficult thing to define, because it means a lot of different things to a lot of people, especially even in the sports world. For instance, one might say, I played 20 years in the NBA, and I never had an injury, and I was a 10-time All-Star, and I won MVP. That's a success to me. Others might call success, if you don't win an NBA championship, you're not successful, right? Somebody might look at economic success. I never really got to the NBA finals, but you know what? I had some of the most lucrative contracts, and I made a lot of generational wealth. So that's success. So judging leadership or the results of it by your definition of success, I think, is an error. I think you have to listen to the leader to determine whether they were successful or not. And when we listen to Jordan, whether we agree with his tactics or not, the methodology may be, questionable from a bird's eye view in the 21st century, where leadership has evolved. But if you listen to him, his goal was to win championships. His goal was to win championships. So if that is his definition of where he's leading people to, regardless of how I may feel about it, then we have to say that his leadership was successful. And I want to take a listen to another video here. And this is from ESPN, of course, The Last Dance. It's called Michael Jordan, the Tough Guy. Let's take a listen and we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
People were afraid of him. We were his teammates and we were afraid of him. And there was just fear.
Catch the ball when I throw it to you. I just threw it to you.
Ignore this guy. He's come through, but he's overplayed.
The fear factor of MJ was so thick.
Yeah, let's not get it wrong. He was a jerk. He crossed the line numerous times. But as time goes on and you think back about what he was actually trying to accomplish, you're like, yeah, he was a hell of a teammate.
He was pushing us all to be better because he wanted to win. And guess what? It worked.
We kind of needed that, you know what I'm saying? I needed him to be the bad guy, the tough guy.
Okay. Now, it's important, again, now, I'm trying to contextualize this for you, because I think the pundits have got it wrong. I think the Shannon Sharps of the world, I think the Stephen Smiths of the world, although Steve does come to Michael's defense, the Max Kellermans of the world, I think they've got it all wrong because they are trying to understand Michael's leadership and strategy through the wrong lens. Again, you have to understand through his eyes and what he was trying to accomplish. And what better than those who were in this last dance with him? Now, there are some teammates, and I might touch on that didn't agree. But again, I will repeat, no leader is without some level of controversy. Even myself, there's people that I'm sure will say this guy, was one of the best leaders I ever had. And I'm sure some will say I didn't like his leadership style. I tell the story in my book about how when my last tour of duty in the Navy, I was an instructor at the engineering school at Great Lakes, and my class excelled. My class was one of the top classes each and every class that came along, and because my students were happy because they were having fun in class, I was called in and ridiculed because my supervisor told me, this is the Navy, this is the military. Your students are laughing, and I thought, well, that's a human emotion. I don't know what's wrong with that. But his idea was that students should be afraid, right? And fear is a motivator. We hear about this in that video we just saw, that they were afraid of Michael. Fear is a motivator. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the best motivator, but it is a motivator. Think about your parents. I was afraid of my pops and my mother. Are you kidding me? I didn't want to do wrong. Why? Because I knew there was accountability and repercussions. Fear motivated me. Coaches, back then, fear was a motivator because you knew if you didn't play well, probably on Saturday practice, you were going to run until you passed out. It was that fear that motivated me and others. Did the coach hate us? Did my mother or father hate me? No, it was accountability. It was like, yes, you will pay a price. Get back to what I said before. Michael was more than simply a player. He was a player coach. And those methodologies that were used were not unheard of. Think about the Bobby Knights of the world. Wasn't Bobby Knight the one that threw the chair across the gym floor in the game? Bobby Knight would get up in your face during the game yelling at you. Why? Because he was trying to motivate you. That was his style. That was his technique. That was Michael's technique. Now, one could say, I disagree with that. Well, you have every right to do, but the lens, though, be careful through the lens in which you judge that. Is leadership good or bad? Can we evaluate it only by its success or failure? You heard, I think it was, it might have been Will Perdue who was talking about, yeah, he went over the line. He pushed. But looking back in retrospect, he was a great teammate, a hell of a teammate, because he was trying to get us somewhere. He was trying to win, right? I don't know why you get into sports if you're not trying to compete and win. I mean, sports is, we could almost argue that the style of leadership needed in sports is different from corporate. Because in sports, especially professional sports, where there's big money, there's big stakes, there's legacy involved. I don't know, and there is worldwide recognition in legacy of success and failure. The stakes are truly high, higher than the corporate boardroom when you're trying to ensure that your products are out. Yes, that's important, but it is not through the eyes of the world looking at you as an individual and your ability to compete and be successful. Yeah, that's high stake. And what does it take to do what he did? Well, this cycle drive, again, as Skip Bayless has said, wasn't it Scottie Pippen that says, we needed that as our group, as the individuals that we were. We needed that tough guy. We needed someone to push us, to make us better, to make us stronger. Could it be the genius of a leader to recognize that sort of desire and need in a group and say, I'm going to take on that persona. That's going to be me. I'm going to push. I'm going to drive. I'm going to ridicule. I'm going to try my best to drag them along. Now, and we're going to take a break here, but now let me say this. Michael Jordan was probably the greatest competitor ever. He did not take a night off. He did not have days where he wanted to rest his body as we do in the new NBA. He played hurt. He played when he had the stomach flu we found out was food poisoning. He played when he was not 100%. So when you see a leader that leads with that example, and he says, this is the level that I'm on. We're going to take a break, folks. This is the level that I'm on. How can you not try to come along with that level? Well, folks, listen, hang in there. We're going to be right back.
Oklahoma Humanities Brainbox podcast uses the humanities to take listeners on a deep dive into the issues affecting American society and culture. Join some of Oklahoma's most interesting and knowledgeable humanities scholars to explore how history, literature, ethics, philosophy, and other humanities fields inform our understanding of current events and the human experience. And to find the Brainbox podcast, simply search Brainbox Podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Google Play, and any other podcasting library. If you have any ideas or comments rattling around in your noggin, email us at brainbox@okhumanities.org.
This is Dr. Laura Gillot, and when I listen to podcasts, I always listen to the One Mic, One Voice show.
All right, folks. We are talking about leadership today through the lens of Michael Jordan. And again, I want to emphasize that, Mike is one of my all-time favorite sports icons to watch. And I remember those days. I remember the 90s and the excitement behind that, the thrill of the games, and just what he brought to the court. And this LastDance documentary has taken us behind the scenes. It goes over his father's death. It shows his humanity that I think is lost in a lot of understanding when it comes to his leadership. Because you cannot devoid the leader from the person. Michael talks about how his brother would play basketball and they would always almost come to blows. And I remember me and my brother, playing basketball, and the same things would happen because I wanted to win and he wanted to win. And it would be that competitive. That's not unheard of, but that drive followed him throughout his entire life. And I thought the documentary did a very good job of humanizing him in the sense of when he lost his father, and how much pain and agony that caused him, and how he befriended one of his security guards, and how he would call his security guard late at night in tears and ask him to come by and to just spend time with him. You cannot remove that. It was not that Jordan was a tyrant. His practices might have been sort of in that arena, but he truly cared about winning. And he knew that in order to win, he couldn't win by himself. But he also knew, looking at the cast in which he was on this stage of basketball with, he had to prepare them for the ultimate play. And that was the playoffs, the NBA championship. Scottie Pippen again said, we needed that. We needed that. His right-hand man said, we needed that. Again, the pundits today are judging it through the wrong lens. And clearly, and I will say this, clearly, if you took the talents of Jordan today as a leader, I mean, if you took his basketball IQ and talents, he would, he'd probably win the next 10 easily championships compared to the game today as it was yesterday. But if you took his leadership style, it will never work. It will never work because leadership has evolved. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to talk about 4 distinct leadership styles here that we all should carry into environments where we work and and where we tend to view others too. So you have this, the first one, autocratic. Okay. And this is where I would definitely place not only Jordan's style, but the style, I would call it / old school style of leadership. This leadership relies on coercion, and his style is paternalistic, command, and compliance. The autocratic leader gives orders which must be obeyed by the subordinates. In other words, I'm the leader. Do as I tell you to do. This style is still very much, I mean, if you've been in the military, like I have, 13 years, this is the style of most military leaders. It's, I'm in charge. You're going to do what I say, and that's just the way it is. Well, would we say the military is a failure? No, they protected this country. They went to war. They've fought in wars. They've come back home. We would not say that the military of the United States is a failure. But this is the style. It's always been. And this was the style of coaches when I grew up. This was it. I remember one of my first days when I got to my first ship, my supervisor called me in one day, wanted to bring something to my attention, and he started off by saying this. This is a one-way conversation. I don't even want to see you look like you're going to speak. And then he went on to tell me what he wanted, and then he told me to get the hell out. That was his leadership style. Did I appreciate it? No, I didn't. I thought in my mind, how can this guy even be talking to me like this? But that was his style, and a style of a lot of leaders. That's why I was criticized. Again, going back to my supervisor calling me in when I was instructor. He was like, I wasn't dropping the hammer. I wasn't mean. I wasn't autocratic. That was his style, right? Can we say that that's not good? Can we say that that is unsuccessful? Depends on what you're trying to do. Depends on what environment you are in. In the military, I think it's necessary to have those sort of powers to be able to say under pressure, life or death, do it. No questions asked. So that is a style of leadership. Then you have the democratic style of leadership. Usually gives instructions only after consulting with the group. He sees to it that policies are worked out in a group discussion and with the acceptance of the group. This sort of inclusiveness, this sort of participatory, I think, involvement from everyone in the group, right? That every voice matters. Well, we're supposed to live in a democracy. Well, we're really in a republic, but it's for a whole nother discussion. But this sort of engagement, right? That all voices can come to the table and our decisions will be made as a group by the majority of the group, right? That's a leadership style. I think we have evolved, which I'm hoping that a lot of leaders have evolved into this sort of inclusivity, right? This idea that all voices are involved. Then you have the free rein leadership. This idea that a free rein leader completely gives his leadership authority to others, right? The responsibility of the work is entrusted to the group. He limits or she limits her authority to maintain the contact of the group. So in other words, this is the one that, I'm just going to let you kind of do it. I have problems. There can be problems in all of these categories. This one is this supervisor that you hardly ever see, that that doesn't really care too much about what's going on. And maybe they're there simply for the paycheck. There's no passion. There's really no commitment. The people are the ones that keep the organization afloat. And then the last one is just paternalistic. The last one is the style that the person sees themselves as the father or the mother, and you're kind of the children. And they try to lead in a way that they are guiding you and telling you what to do, because honestly, you're just not them, right? So Michael Jordan was autocratic. Clearly, his style of leadership was, I'm going to push, and you're going to do, but I know exactly what we need to do to be a champion. So you see, there's two ways for us to evaluate leadership, in my opinion. There's two ways. Number one, you ask those who follow that leader. I'm always amazed by leaders that think everything is great, because they ask their employees, subordinates, however you want to look, how are things? I mean, I think one of the dumbest things a leader can ever ask an employee is, what type of job do you think I'm doing as a leader? I mean, how are you supposed to answer that? I mean, you have bills, you have responsibilities. You can't, you're doing a terrible job. You can't do that. The only way to answer that is, I think things are going good. I mean, you can't. But as in my role as a consultant, I have the opportunity to go out and ask people this question without their supervisor being present, right? And I can tell you the majority of the time is I'm being devalued. They don't care about me. It's their way or the highway, and they take all the success themselves. And so you if you want to evaluate the leader, you ask the followers. And clearly in this document, I mean, this LastDance, this LastDance that we've just seen on ESPN. Again, I want to encourage you to watch it. We have seen followers of Michael Jordan, his teammates, testify not just to the ills that they feel Michael Jordan committed in pushing, and this documentary and pushing, but they've also talked about how great of a teammate he was, about how much they needed him, about how relentless he was and how that rubbed off on them. Scotty Burrell, probably the player that he ridiculed and pushed and shamed the most, said, I needed Michael Jordan in my life. Matter of fact, he said, I don't know what I will be today without Michael Jordan. That's, I think, the signs of a successful leader. Again, I'm not going to here to condone the strategy. Again, I'm going to timestamp it. I'm going to say that this was the 90s. The 80s was like this. The 70s was like this. People, coaches, Michael was a player, coaches use these tactics. My coaches use these tactics. And my coach would get, I mean, it was a running joke that our varsity coach would get so close to you and he would yell, and he would be spitting on you, and we would running joke that we could tell what he had that night for dinner. I mean, he had a steak, he had a salad, you could smell all of it. I mean, it was, but that was his style. He wanted to motivate you, and his motivation was through fear and intimidation, right? But also that high school team went 3 years without losing a game. So I might say that's the high school that the Greek Freak brother is playing at as well. So Dominican high school, I can say that. But let me go on. So 2 ways. Number one, you ask the followers, the teammates, the subordinates, and then you examine the level of success or failure. Remember, I said success can mean many different things for many different people. So you examine it through the eyes of the leader or the eyes of the group, which they should match, right? They should match. And I think everybody on the Bulls wanted to win a championship. Michael's main goal was to win games and win championships. Main goal. Wasn't to be MVP, although, he took motivation from somebody else winning it when he thought he should. But that motivation led him for his ultimate goal to win championship. You got the MVP. Look what I got. I got the championship, right? So you evaluate the success of that. Let's look at that. He won 6 titles. Never went to a game 7 in any of his championship series. Won 6 MVPs. Now, if that's not success, if the goal is to win championships, if that's not success, meaning that every time you win, you won. You not only won, but you were the MVP. If that's not success, then tell me what it is. Through the eye gate of the leader in the group. Again, you may disagree with the methodology, but when we measure that or we evaluate that, we sit down with Jordan, said, Michael, what's your idea of success? Winning championships. He won 6 of them, never lost one, never went to a game 7, 6 MVPs. I think you can say he was successful. Now, so even in life, what is our goal? That's how we determine whether we're successful or not. I mean, if I want to lift 500 pounds, which is impossible, but just say I'm a strong guy and I get to 450, that might be good, but my goal was 500. I'm not successful. It may be good. I may have gotten better, but I didn't reach my goal. So it's not successful. Through the eye gate of the leader, through the eyes of those following. If that's your goal, you cannot argue, but he was successful. And like I said, the pundits have had a field day on his leadership style. But most of the players are thankful. Why? Because that was legacy. Why? Because they made money. Why? Because there was among some would consider one of the greatest dynasties, if not in all of basketball. But you had some that were not. I mean, Horace Grant came out and said, Michael, the documentary was untrue and other things like that. And again, if I was not a guy that has endured criticism, and I would like to say criticism in a sense that it was not true, I probably would be swayed by what Horace says. But every leader, no matter how, I don't care. And I'm going to talk about my view of a good leader. I don't care what style you use. You're going to have folks that love you and folks that don't. That's just part. If you don't want to be a leader, folks, do not put yourself in that position, because a great leader will always be criticized. President Obama, great leader. How much was he criticized? Okay. People even criticize Mother Teresa. I mean, come on. Anybody that is trying to accomplish something great, you're going to have critics. And if you can't handle that, you'll never accomplish anything great, because not everyone is going to agree with your methodology. That's just what it is. Now, how has leadership evolved? I mentioned that to you earlier, that leadership has evolved, just like technology, music. I mean, when rap came out, nobody thought rap was going to go anywhere. Now it's pervasive. It is creating culture. Film. I mean, come on, film has evolved. The way we do it, how we see it, subject matter, all of that has evolved. And so has leadership. To think that this leadership style should be adopted today is wrong. I said we had to timestamp it. No one in, let me say this, no one that is in the school of leadership, and I mean the psychology of it, the methodology of it, would condone this type of leadership today, would adapt it. Now, there are people that are still, remember I said the military, right? That's still happening today. However, in the context of sports, and I think even in the larger culture, no one would say that pushing people, trying to push people beyond their limits, the ridicule, the psycho drive, would be of value today. I think, and I'll say this, and people can disagree with me all you want to, I think kids are just not, they're just soft. They're soft. They're not hard. They're not accustomed to, there's a sense of entitlement. When I came up, I didn't feel like I was entitled to anything. I had to earn everything. I had to claw. I had to fight. I had to be better. I had to work hard. There's a sense of entitlement today. You can disagree with me all you want to, but that sort of work ethic, that sort of drive and tenacity, it's just not in most young people today. So that leadership would destroy them. It would crush them, even beyond, they probably walk away from the game because they couldn't handle it. Mentally, the generation is different, right? It just is. Again, you can disagree with me, but I have kids, okay? I've worked with younger people, and I'm just telling you, from my opinion, they cannot handle that sort of, that's what even the military in itself, I hear all the time how the military has become so soft over the years. Arthur says leadership is leading an individual group to achieve a common goal. The only time leadership is ever truly questioned is when tactics don't lead to consistent positive results. Yeah, I mean, you question when it's failing. You question when there's not unity in the group, or there's dissension, or you question because with disunity and dissension, there's a sense of failure, non-accomplishment. And if you look at the Bulls, clearly there had to be a sense of unity, whether fear binded them, intimidation binded them. You cannot argue with the results. And I'm gonna come back and finish up here in a second. But what I want to do is just take a moment to talk about my view of the ultimate leader. And I write this in my book. And I think that I think we have learned from these other leadership styles. We've learned from Jordan. We've learned from the Bobby Knights. We've learned from bosses in corporate world. I remember a boss when I was leaving asked me, what did I learn from this experience? I said, I learned what not to do as a leader. So we have evolved, right? And so I think my ideal, and I want to encourage you to watch that documentary. I'm telling you, I think you'll look at it through different eyes if you do after listening to this show. But let me say this: and my idea is an inspirational leader is empathetic. You have to put yourself in the shoes of those you lead. That is one of the essence of 21st century leadership. Being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and say, I don't want to feel like that, or I don't want to be treated like that, right? So and not everybody has that ability. Am I saying that you cannot be a good leader without that ability? Of course I'm saying that. You can't be. You can't be. If you cannot put yourself in the shoes of others or attempt to and try to understand how something would impact them in their lives, how can you lead them? Because the opposite of that is you being selfish. And it's all about you. And it's all about the ego. And it's all about what you want to get accomplished. So no, that is necessary for a leader, and for a leader that of the 21st century, inspirational leader. Also, an inspirational leader is inclusive. We go back to the democratic leadership. You're inclusive. He or she is going to involve others. It's participatory. You're going to involve others. They're going to be part of the process. They are going to know that their voices are valued. This is where it becomes a little sketchy, because most leaders will tell you that they love to hear from others. That's such a, I love people being involved. But they will always they will always give you this caveat though. But in the end, I have to make the decision. No, you don't. A good leader understands that sometimes some team member will say, let's do this. And that has to be the wisest thing. And so the leader says, that's great. Let's go with that. Right? I support that totally. You're part of that process, but you don't have to stamp your approval on everything. Because then it's about you. It's not about all voices must carry the same weight. And this is where I get into problem. Even when I train on this, people say, hold up for a minute. I'm in charge. I know I love to bring and hear different things. And then that's not an inspirational leader. An inspirational leader is not afraid or intimidated by other voices having the same weight as his or hers. Why should I be intimidated? I'm in charge. Why should I be intimidated? Right? They come to me. But there are those that want to say, no, you're a little lower than me. That's not inspirational leadership. Inspirational leadership is empowering. You build people up. You don't tear them down. Okay? There's laziness in leadership. Is simply telling people what they did wrong, criticizing people for mistakes they made. Anybody can do that. That's laziness in leadership. But inspirational leadership strategizes about how can I take this situation and make it teachable? How can I take this situation and empower them? How can I take this situation so that they will learn something from this and be better off? That takes time. That takes an understanding. That takes empathy. Oh, yeah, we get back to that one, right? But also, inspirational leadership makes everyone accountable. There's no favoritism. How many places have you been where there's favoritism? There's no favoritism. Everyone is held to the highest standard. That's including the leader. That's what I say a 21st century great leader is all about. Now, there's many more. You got to pick up my book, Soul, School of Unselfish Leadership. It's going to break it down for you completely. Not just that, but in every facet of leadership I go into. I think it's a disservice to Jordan to evaluate his leadership according to this. It's a disservice. It's a disservice for me to take this and evaluate it according to the military leadership. It's a disservice. It's really not going to work there. Are there pockets where it will work? Yeah, I do believe there are circumstances where it will work. But there's pockets where it won't work. The majority of them. So, not going to use that as a standard. It's a disservice. And that's what many of the pundits are doing. Shannon Sharp on, what's his show, Undisputed, ESPN. He called Michael a bully. And see, I understand what Shannon is trying to say. He's trying to say that you can't take this leadership style, which I agree with him, and apply it today. I agree. We're not going to disagree on that. It's not bullying. What does a bully do? A bully wants to hurt you, destroy the person you are, intimidate you to the point where you are paralyzed by fear. If Jordan was bullying them, they wouldn't have won 6 championships. They would have had no confidence to go in there and win. They would have had no confidence to stand up in the tough moments of a ball game. No, he did. And plus, Jordan didn't do this publicly. This was behind the scenes, his motivation style. He didn't want to embarrass them in public eye. He knew he needed them. He was trying to push them. It wasn't bullying. That's wrong. That's just wrong. It's a wrong term to use. It was autocratic. That's what it was. That's what his style was. And this is why I say the debate, the lens through which these commentators analyze these things, especially this one, is what I would say skewed. I don't agree with Skip Bayless much. I don't. And he's also on Undisputed. Him and Shannon go back and forth. And I don't agree with him on much of anything. Matter of fact, he's a Cowboys fan, and I'm definitely not a Cowboys fan. However, he's absolutely correct on this one. He's absolutely correct on the fact that Jordan is not a bully. That, yes, he led by fear. Yes, he led by intimidation. Yes, he did all of those things, but he didn't do it to destroy his teammates, to rip away their self-confidence. Matter of fact, Mike was pushing them because in his eyes, he was building their confidence. He wanted them to stand up to him, to push back. That was his methodology. And in doing so, they got tougher. They got more confident. Because if they can stand up to the GOAT, then there's nobody that they can't stand up to, no obstacle that they can't overcome. That was through his eye gate. So the question is, what type of leader are you? We're all leading someone, whether we're parents, teachers, mentors, whether we work in healthcare or we're a social worker, counselor. We're all leaders. What type of leader are you? Let me tell you what we can take away from, while we won't take the method, Jordan's method, no, we won't take that. But there's a lot we can take away. We can take away the drive to succeed, the sacrifice that it takes to be the best you can be. If someone says you're better than someone else, that's their analysis. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to be the best you can be. We can all push ourselves to be better. If we reach for the stars, we ought to land somewhere in the stratosphere. We can all be better. That determination and that idea of I am going to maximize my gifts and talents. I'm not going to waste them. We can take that away from Jordan. One of the most gifted, if not the most gifted athlete. He did not waste his talents or his gift. He maximized it. How many of us are wasting our talents and our gifts? How many of us are saying, yeah, I'll do that, or that we procrastinate, we put this off, or I don't know, we lack the confidence to achieve what are your gifts and talents? Are you wasting them? Do you not have the commitment or the drive? Are you not self-motivated? Jordan didn't need motivation. How many times you hear people, yeah, he's got great potential. She's got great potential. What does that mean? Potential is nothing if it's not developed. How are you developing that? How are you working at that? Think about Ellison. Ralph Ellison spent 7 years writing Invisible Man. He had a goal. He had a goal to write this historic novel. And he stayed with it for 7 years. He spent days analyzing a single paragraph. What did he get? Well, he got the National Book Award for that. He ended up getting the President Medal of Freedom for his contributions to literature. Are you kidding me? That's determination. That's commitment. That's what we get from Jordan's legacy. Yes, he's a champion, but we can be a champion in our own lives if we are committed, if we are dedicated, if we are self-motivated. That's what we can get. Now, what do we take from this? We take that there's a new generation of leaders. And while we must have that individually, we must inspire others to do that. Because history will speak of us. Somewhere in the distant future, a scribe will reach down deep into the archives of our time, and what will she find? Will she discover that we overcame our differences? Will she find that out of many, we became one? Or will she find that we solved nothing and remain a divided peoples? Yes, history will speak of us.
We can make a difference if we try. We can be the change that's in our lives. All we gotta do is work together. We gotta raise our children better. We gotta stop the hate, and spread the love. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice, your choice.
Thank you for downloading the One Mic, One Voice show. This episode is brought to you by Blacken Studios. To learn more about Blacken Studios, go to blackenstudios.com or visit their Facebook page. The views and opinions of the One Mic, One Voice podcast show do not reflect the views of Blacken Studios